Everyone who knows who Mr.based is already knows that he's a pretty wacky character. He's made a pretty big name for himself in the short amount of time he's been in the lolcow universe, and a lot of that has to do with his involvement with World of T-Shirts. But his lore goes far beyond his involvement with World of T-Shirts, and he's been involved in some pretty heinous stuff. It's not only money laundering, it's also prostitution and a murder case he was a suspect in. This guy wasn't around the best people, and now instead of exploiting girls, he's just exploiting Joshua every day in front of a camera on live stream. It's pretty crazy. But in today's video, we're not really going to be focusing on Joshua and Mr.based relationship as much as we're going to be focusing on the murder case involving Mr.based. Yes, Mr.based was the suspect in a murder case. If you want to know more about Joshua and Mr.based relationship, or even Mr.based past, I'll have a couple of videos linked in the description, as well as in a card during this part of the video if I remember to do so. So make sure you go check out those videos so you can learn more about Mr.based. But today I'm just going to be giving a quick synopsis of both Mr.based and World of T-Shirts, so we can just jump right into the video. If you don't know who World of T-Shirts is, he's a lolcow who got popular on the app TikTok for singing the song Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z.
Yeah, in New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of, there's nothing you can't do, now you're in New York.
And after that, he had a plethora of controversies, but we're not going to be getting into that in this video. Just know that he's a lolcow who's very popular, and when his name is included in videos or in posts, they usually get clicks, especially if they're about him doing something vulgar or controversial. Mr.based is just another run-of-the-mill D-Gen IRL streamer, but he saw World of T-Shirts as an opportunity to make money. Their relationship started off rather negative. It was pretty rocky to begin with. He had actually met Joshua on the streets. It seems as though he had stream sniped Joshua, but maybe it was just coincidental and he just saw them walking on the streets of New York. Either way, they started to have some kind of argument where Mr.based was basically heckling Josh and saying that he was the king of New York and Josh wasn't. And of course, this made World of T-Shirts like spurg out, and he started saying some pretty vulgar things towards Mr.based, and Mr.based is pretty passive, so he was letting most of that go.
He's with the group right here? Okay, bye-bye. Hey, my name is Mr.based. I'm the world's greatest streamer. Why is this group walking past me?
Let's go.
Who are you guys?
Scram!
Who are you guys?
Scram!
Who are you?
Scram!
Who are you?
I'll sue your ass. Scram!
No. Who are you? Who are you? I just want to know who you guys are. I'm the #1 streamer in New York City.
Scram!
I'm based on YouTube.
Go away!
You scram! You scram! How did you get so loud? And who are you, sir?
Run,
Who are
run,
you?
run,
Everyone run! Mr.based! Mr.based on YouTube! Mr.based! Who are you? Who are you?
Unemployed brat!
Yes! Who are you? You scream like a...
Go away!
Who are you? And I'll go!
Go away!
Mr.based on YouTube!
I'm the king of New York!
I'm the king of New York!
He's giving a
Make
tour
him
right
go.
now.
Oh, okay. Whoa! That guy just hit you.
It's alright, I bumped into him. It's
Let's go now!
Anyway, peace and love. Have a good time.
So my theory when watching this interaction is that Mr.based just kind of wanted to see if having Joshua in a stream would get clicks, and of course it did. Joshua is a popular lolcow. If you have him freak out or, like I said, say anything controversial or vulgar, people are going to click, they're going to reshare it, they're going to make videos about it. It's going to go viral, right? Before this though, Mr.based had actually had like sort of a small media experience, considering that he was one time on The View as well as on Opie and Anthony and on the Howard Stern show. So he had some experience in radio. He had some experience on a talk show. He had experiences in media, which is crazy to say, but he was known as the king of pimps at one point. So of course, he would want to do some kind of media rounds and talk about that. Eventually, he would be involved in a plethora of cases, involving money laundering and prostitution. But we're not going to be talking about that in this video. We're just going to be focusing on that one case, like I said. There are a lot of good videos on Mr.based past. I think there was one just recently, and I'll probably link that one in the description. There's one Redman Speaks made, and that one was really good. That's like a very underrated Mr.based video, but there's one that's like an hour long that just came out recently that really goes into Mr.based past. And I feel like it's really easy to mess up this case, because if you look at Mr.based, just with the aspects that he was, the king of all pimps or whatever, you might just think of it as a black and white case, because that's the mistake I made. You see that Mr.based was an ex-pimp, you see that he was exploiting women, and then your mind kind of goes to, okay, this has to do with whatever the case was. But if you actually look at it and you take the time to sift through everything, it actually had little to do with the fact that Mr.based was a pimp, and more to do with the fact that he was just a horrible person in general. Like, not just exploiting women, but also the people that he was around and the things that he was doing outside of his profession. He was just an all-around scumbag. This case took place in March of 2010 and had involved Mr.based and his roommate named Zoltan. His roommate was a photographer, and the woman involved was named Julia, and she was an aspiring model. She was only 21 years old. So basically, the situation was that Julia was going to go to get, her pictures taken. She was going to meet a photographer. She was an aspiring model. She wasn't doing anything illegal or unethical. She was simply just going to get her pictures taken. And even if she was doing something illegal or unethical, nobody deserves to pass away like that. And it sucks that really nothing came out of this case, because in my opinion, I feel like Mr.based and his roommate Zoltan should have gotten charged for this murder. And it's just crazy that Mr.based was able to wiggle his way out of this. So what happened was Zoltan and Julia were supposed to meet at a nightclub. And they ended up meeting at the nightclub. Text messages were exchanged, and it happened, right? Everyone knows that. That's a fact, that they met at that nightclub. Later that night, she also met up with another photographer, and then she ended up passing away from ingestion of GHB. Now, to clear up any confusion, GHB is a date drug. It isn't something that people take recreationally. It's something that usually people take and then are R-worded. You know what I mean? It's not just like something people just pop and then have fun and party. It's to knock people out and then make them incapacitated so that they can become victims. Mr.based had also admitted to taking that drug. So I don't understand why that would happen. It is very weird, and it does confuse everything involving the case. I don't understand why Mr.based would take the drug. Maybe he took it after this woman had passed away, just to kind of throw the trail off or something. If that's the case, it worked, because he ended up basically getting away and then was later charged with money laundering, prostitution. He was basically charged with a plethora of things, you know what I mean? And he did quite a while in jail. And this is something that Mr.based talks about often, saying that it was like one of the worst experiences in his life. He's pretty much a baby about it, and he makes it quite obvious that he never wants to go back to jail because of the experience he had in there.
Said you went to jail. Did you actually have to serve any time in prison for that offense?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you got convicted and all that. How much time did you get for that?
Well, like, it's a complicated story. We don't have time for it, but like, I pretended, like, when a person who can't imagine themselves going to jail or prison first goes to jail or prison, I think they have a tendency of acting like their health is failing. So I did that act like my health was failing, and they sent me to like crazy person place, like a jail that's also more like a hospital. Like it's really not nearly as bad as a jail. Like I didn't even get the prison experience yet. I got sent to one of those like loony bin hospitals, and then they determined at the loony bin hospital after a month that I was faking it. And then they sent me to a real jail for the first time in my life, you know? So a lot of people that fake being crazy not to go to real jail, because, you know, fear of the unknown. Like if you've never been in jail, you could be scared out of your mind of what that's like.
Right.
You know, not jail for one night or 2 nights, like going to jail. Like I'll tell you, like there were people in there that faked it successfully. Like there was a guy in there who stuck toothpicks in his, literally in his dick, to let them think that he was too crazy to go to prison, and that worked. Like, oh God, did I see some crazy shit? And like, if you have a weird sense of humor, kind of funny that way.
But to put into perspective how many charges he was facing, he pleaded not guilty to 11 felonies at one point. And obviously, he went to jail for all that shit. For the prostitution, for the money laundering, all that, man. He got charged for that shit. It's basically believed that he had some kind of connection, allegedly, to this case. And, you know, I'll just say connection and leave it at that. But, you know, I'm pointing y'all in a pretty obvious direction that homie had some evidence stacked against him. The odds weren't in his favor, especially considering that he had also consumed that GHB somehow. And, you know, this woman had died of GHB poisoning.
$5, Mr.based. Please address the murder allegations. You just ignored it.
I had a roommate named Zoltan who was with this chick for like days. She was visiting him, and I never even met her. And he came upstairs to the apartment at midnight one night. I was sleeping in my bed. He knocks on my door. Jason, I want to introduce you to someone. He shows off a hot chick to me. We hang out for a while. He goes, you want some GHB? I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, rah, it tastes like shit. And then he goes and pretends to sip some because I know him. He gives it to the girl. She sniffs it. She goes, ah. And that was it. And then I got really sick from the GHB a couple minutes later, 10 minutes later. I don't know how long. And I'm like, I got to go to bed. I was embarrassed. I was going to throw up in front of him. And that was it. Then I don't remember anything. And I woke up on the floor with vomit all over me, with Zoltan telling me that the girl was dead. And what's he going to do? What's he going to do? That's all. Do I know for a fact Zoltan killed this chick? No. But if he didn't kill her, who did? Of course he killed her. Well, in my opinion doesn't count. He was picked up by the cops and everything. I was never picked up. And Zoltan got me lawyers so that I wouldn't say something to hurt him by accident. Like I wasn't even allowed to talk about it because of the lawyers Zoltan got for me. But so I just talked about it. There's like videos, Kick Clips did a 20-minute explanation. I did the long version of the story. I've told the fucking story so many times, and I'll keep telling it, but like a lot of people point out, it's so disrespectful to the memory of that girl and her family.
So basically, to end off the video, I wanted to give a short rundown to what we've just talked about. Julia was an aspiring model. She went to meet Mr.based roommate, whose name was Zoltan. They met at a nightclub and later went back to Mr.based apartment. She later passed away from GHB poisoning. Mr.based admitted to the New York Post that he had also consumed the GHB and that he covered Zoltan's entire apartment in vomit, so much that they had to change the whole interior. So he did a lot to that apartment. At the end of the day, it's not for me to make a definitive answer on whether or not Mr.based did anything in this case. I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer, and I have no idea of how laws work, really, to be honest with you. I'm just giving you the facts of what I've read, and so far it seems to point to the fact that Mr.based had some kind of obvious involvement in this case. And at the end of the day, he shouldn't have been involved in this case at all. Neither of them should have been involved in this case, and nobody should have passed away. It's obvious that it was due to somebody's negligence, whether that be Zoltan, Mr.based, or both. But at the end of the day, Julia lost her life And that's tragic. So I just wanted to bring attention to this case and point out why Mr. Based is such a bad person. I know he can come off as sort of just a wacky character, but at the end of the day, he's not only just exploiting Josh, he's also been involved in some pretty heinous things. So think about that the next time you're in his chat or donating to him just to bug Josh. You're actively supporting this horrible person. And that's just a fact.